Why hello there friends, it's Emma here, the Bookish Princess. The Booktube community has had some very sad news recently. A fellow booktuber, a wonderful video creator, and a friend, Jennifer Brooks, passed away unexpectedly at the beginning of the month. It was so sad and shocking to hear about it. I knew Jennifer through Febregency when Christy Lewis from Dostoevsky in Space, when we were first talking about the idea of this readathon, themed on Regency era literature from Great Britain. We were saying who, might want to be a co-host, and Christy said, what about Jennifer Brooks? And so it was such a delight to discover her channel. Her reading interests were so broad, but she talked about classics and ancient books in such a magical way. And it was such a delight to get to know her and to have her as a co-host of Febregency. She was a co-host for our first 2 years. When we were planning this year's readathon in December, we reached out to her, but she was busy and wasn't going to be able to co-host this year. But I know we all hoped that she'd be able to return as a co-host in the future. So it's really hard to process, and it's just very sad. When talking with Christy and the other Febregency hosts, we were saying we'll have to read something in her memory, and so I was going back and watching older videos. If you're participating in Febregency this year, you'll probably come across many of Jennifer's videos. She did such wonderful introductions to Shelley and Byron and Keats, and her love of those poets and authors was so beautiful to see. She really did such an amazing job getting people excited and interested in classic literature, but her interests were so broad, and I loved her travel videos from Italy. She had a K-pop journaling channel, which I love K-pop too, so it was always really fun to see that. We did some Febregency reading sprints over on her channel. I think that was just last year, and it was like 2.5 hours that we were doing the reading sprints. But I remember after we went off of YouTube, but we were all still there chatting. We ended up chatting for like another half hour or another hour, just because it was so fun to talk with a kindred spirit about books and life and the world and faith and so many different things. But when I was going back to rewatch this poetry salon that she was part of that we did a couple years ago, she was talking about Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, which is a Byron. She loved Byron, and this was one of her favorite poems of his, and just poems generally. The way she talked about it, it was so wonderful. So as I've been thinking about my Febregency TBR, thinking about Febregency, I just automatically think about Jennifer. So I've decided I'm going to be reading Childe Harold's Pilgrimage in her memory. Definitely keeping her mother and her family in my thoughts and prayers. I saw Christy post, and also Tiffany from Beautiful Minutia, about a readathon in her memory, We Love Jenny. So I'm sure they'll be sharing more details about that soon, but Jennifer will be very much missed. I know so many booktubers have already been posting about their memories of her. The internet is such a funny place because, you never meet somebody in person, but you feel like you know them, you feel like you're friends, and what they share, what they create really does have an impact, especially here on Booktube, about reading. Like, it inspires your own reading and leads you to new authors and new thoughts. So I think Jennifer has left a beautiful legacy across the world of so many viewers who ended up reading things because of what she posted. So Childe Harold's Pilgrimage is definitely at the top of my Febregency TBR, but I thought I would quickly share some of the other books that I'm planning on reading next month. Belinda by Mariah Edgeworth is going to be our group read. We're going to be discussing this with my book club, so we're going to have a video call towards the end of the month. This is mentioned by Jane Austen in Northanger Abbey as one of the novels of taste, wit, and genius. And last year we actually read another one of those novels, Evelina by Fanny Burney. But I love Mariah Edgeworth. When you read her prose, it's easy to see why Jane Austen loved her. And Belinda is about braving the perils of the marriage market. Belinda learns to think for herself as the examples of her friends prove singularly unreliable. So for our challenges this year, Christie's was read historical fiction set during the Regency period. I haven't actually decided what to read for this one. In my announcement video, I talked about Horatio, Hornblower. That is by, I wrote the author down somewhere. It was published in the 1930s, and it's about a British naval captain. It's by C.S. Forester. So I think that one could be neat to read. I'm also kind of tempted to read a Georgette Hare. I actually haven't read her works super widely. Someone in the comments mentioned The Grand Sophie. I have read that one, and I remember enjoying it. But if you guys have a favorite Georgette Hare, let me know in the comments. Maybe you can convince me to read her for that challenge. But another possibility, which is a little bit hefty, so I'm not sure I'll have time for this. It's Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. This was published fairly recently. It is really wonderful though. Her writing style is absolutely amazing, and it kind of nods to Jane Austen's writing style, but without copying it too blatantly. Too often historical fiction set in the Regency period, especially published recently, for me, the writing style just comes off as trying too hard. It doesn't come off as effortless when it tries to be in the vein of Jane Austen, but Susanna Clarke's writing style is all her own and yet evokes Jane Austen in such a wonderful way. The plot of this is set during the Regency time period, but magic is very much around. Susanna Clarke's brilliant first novel is an utterly compelling epic tale of 19th century England and the two very different magicians who, as teacher and pupil and then as rivals, emerged to change its history. In the year 1806, in the throes of the Napoleonic Wars, most people believe magic to be dead in England, until the reclusive Mr. Norrell of Hertford Abbey reveals his powers and becomes a celebrity overnight. Soon another practicing magician emerges, the young, handsome, and daring Jonathan Strange. He becomes Norrell's student, and the two join forces in the war against France. Magic and Regency England. You wouldn't really expect those two to be able to merge so beautifully and seamlessly and powerfully. But this is really an amazing book. If you've never checked it out, I would highly recommend it. We'll see if I have the time to attempt to reread it next month. Stephanie's challenge is read a new to you Regency author. So see, I've read Edgeworth and Byron, so neither of those will work for that challenge, but I do have lots of Regency works that I haven't gotten to yet. Tristan, another of our co-hosts, has posted a video about great Regency authors who aren't Jane Austen, and I know I've taken so many notes from that video. One of them that I'd like to try is The Wild Irish Girl by Lady Morgan. Last year I read a book set in Ireland as well as England, The Absentee by Maria Edgeworth, and that was about a sort of Protestant British landlord. It did deal with the relations between the Anglo-Irish and the native Irish in a really interesting and thoughtful way. And from the synopsis that I've read, The Wild Irish Girl also looks at those relationships and actually looks at the Catholic native Irish who were displaced by the Protestants, by the English who came over and just took their lands and pushed them out of the way. That is my heritage. My people were once royalty in Ireland. They couldn't pass the land down, but they did pass the Catholicism down. That was the wealth that they were able to pass along. But the whole premise of Wild Irish Girl, I believe, is that the young heir to this Protestant Anglo-Irish estate meets a young girl who is part of the Catholic native Irish family that his family displaced. So it just sounds like a really interesting premise. It was published in 1806, and I think Wikipedia was saying that it was so popular that it like inspired jewelry of the time. Glorvina is the heroine's name, which sounds pretty great. And I've never read Lady Morgan before, so that would be a great new to me one. Another one, this is actually a carryover from a past Febregency TBR, is Essay on the Military Policy and Institutions of the British Empire by Captain Pasley of the Engineers. Came out in 1811. You might say, how did something so random end up on your TBR? Jane Austen, of course. This was mentioned in Jane Austen's letters. She said that she protested against it at first, but subsequently found it delightfully written and highly entertaining. So I feel like I need to read this for myself and see whether or not, like, was she joking when she wrote that to Cassandra, or was this actually a really great piece? This was written during the Napoleonic Wars. Jane Austen had brothers serving in the Royal Navy, so I think that's probably partly why she found it to be so interesting. But that one could fulfill Stephanie's challenge, the new to you Regency author, or my challenge, which was read a book from the Regency era that involves a naval journey or travel by sea. Childe Harold's Pilgrimage would also be good for that because he's traveling around Europe. He ends up in Italy. And then the last challenge is from Tristan: learn and engage in a Regency pastime or arrange an evening of Regency games with friends. Over the past few years during Febregency, I've sat down at the piano or picked up my needlework or done different Regency pastimes. And I've also tried some Regency recipes. I got this book last year, Martha Lloyd's household book, the original manuscript from Jane Austen's kitchen. And I did try a recipe, so I might try another one. It has the scans of the original book that Martha Lloyd, who is a friend of the Austens and lived with them, she compiled this cookery book. So I might try another recipe, or maybe try a card game that was popular. I definitely have to decide what I want to do for that challenge. Thank you all so much for watching. If you're going to be participating in Febregency or maybe reading something in memory of Jennifer, I'd love to hear about it. Let me know in the comments down below. I'll talk to you all again soon. Until then, stay bookish. Bye, friends.